Oh man. Oh man, have we got a good show for you. I'm very excited. Hello, and welcome to a masterful episode of the Drywall Podcast. I am your host, Nick Harmon. With us today, I'm very excited to welcome Sunil D'Souza of Drywall Master Tools to the show for his first appearance. Sunil hails from Park, Illinois, and is the president of the company and brings the show a thick history of the automatic taping tools. But first, we dive a little bit into the aspect of Albuquerque. He's a big fan of the show Breaking Bad, and we talk about that, but it didn't take long before we dive into the history of the company Drywall Master. We talk a lot about the early years of Drywall Master, which was actually Tape Master, and that time they sold the company to AMES.
He eventually did make that deal, and he did sell the company.
Okay,
and so,
he did.
Yes,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so
all right.
So Tape Master eventually became also part of that organization, and he did have to sign a non-compete as well. And for a while, Tape Master actually even became what I do believe is that they stopped all production of what was considered the Chicago Tape Master tool, and essentially did what they were doing with Tape Tech, where it just basically was an AMES tool with the Tape Master name. And so they had two separate dealership networks. They had Tape Master and Tape Tech, and they had different dealers in different areas for both. And they kept that up for several years.
I didn't know that.
But Tape Tech, Tape Tech had a bigger dealership network just because that was already established at the time. But Tape Master was also being sold.
All right. Story's getting interesting because it's like your dad's like, okay, he just like sold he's got money now. Like he's good. Go kick it in Hawaii for a couple years. Like, come on, family, we're traveling around the world.
That wasn't my father, and no. Look, he basically just kind of was a little bit bored.
We talk about coming up in the 90s and the progression of computers and phones into the daily lives of individuals at that time, and also the resurrection of Drywall Master's tools and the role Sunil played in that endeavor. He was integral in sales and getting the new brand off the ground. We talk about the pros and cons of renting the automatic tools versus buying, and how an old school drywaller named Johnny Payne wandered into his life, and how that relationship helped shape Drywall Master Tools into what it is today. From marketing to mastery, we touch on quite a bit in this 2-hour powerhouse of an episode. Huge shout out to AMES Tools for once again sponsoring the Drywall Podcast in the month of August, 2 months in a row. You guys are awesome. We really appreciate it. If you don't know who AMES is, I'm sorry, but they happen to be a little company that pioneered the automatic taping tool all the way back in 1939. This episode, we're highlighting some different tools. Tape Tech has been dabbling in different trades lately, namely plaster, stucco, concrete tools, and much, much more. Now, you can elevate your finishing game with their new line of Venetian trowels, crafted from durable stainless steel and made in Italy. These trowels are available in various sizes to meet all of your project needs. Explore their complete range of tools designed to enhance your craftsmanship and achieve that perfect finish. I've also heard that they are durable enough to withstand the rigors of fresco harmony, but I cannot confirm nor deny those claims. But seriously, I've seen the trowels at the Build 25 show, and they are extraordinary. Find out more at shopamestools.com or stop by your local AMES dealer to learn more. But for now, Sunil D'Souza out of Park, Illinois, president of Drywall Master Tools, on the 141st episode of the Drywall Podcast. Let's get into it.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I cannot see you.
Okay. Yeah, my video wasn't exactly prepared this morning, so hope that's okay.
You can use a video on your phone.
Oh, I know. I just wasn't exactly as prepared for video as I was kind of hoping I would be this morning.
What do you mean? I'm in my bedroom, dude. Come on, man. It can't be worse than mine.
I know, but I didn't exactly shave.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Let me see. Give us a sneak peek, because I post on YouTube, man. People are just going to see your Sunil, the name there. That's all they're going to see. Come on, man.
All right.
I've seen you too. I've seen you in person. You're a handsome devil. Shaved or not. There he is.
So
gorgeous. I used to go from my vault. I have a really cool office that's in an old bank vault, and the internet's challenging down there. So I started doing it from home, which I like because I'm home. I got my coffee. It's comfortable.
Yeah.
I think more than anything, I think comfort is a big part of a podcast. Learn as you go.
Yeah. How long have you been doing these podcasts for now?
3 years. Over 3 years.
Okay. By the way, are we actually starting the podcast as we're talking right now?
It's on. It's happening.
Okay. So
the beginning's going to be great.
Off with, I have been. Yeah, I know. Me being self-conscious about my
I love it.
I guess.
It's, you know what? It tears away all the fabric, man. We are who we are, and that's what people want to see. We want to get to know Sunil. Sorry, gray hair. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. I actually went ahead and listened to some of the podcasts that you've done over the last 2 weeks, and there was one thing I found out about you that I was extremely intrigued by. I am a huge Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul fan. And so when I heard that your wife was actually a showrunner on the show, I found that really, really intriguing.
Not a showrunner. She did travel coordination. She also was a script supervisor on the spinoff. It wasn't a spinoff, but it was a movie, El Camino.
Yeah, I loved El Camino.
Yeah, so she was right there next to Vince Gilligan, doing like whatever script supervising. I mean, which is it's the only single person department in a making of a film, but it's really fascinating. I know a little bit about it, but like so the script supervisor, if you think about it, like when they're shooting a scene, there's all these cameras, so there's all these myriad of different angles. Then you have sound. Then you have, so when they hit, action, that thing, they're doing a take. Well, the script supervisor sits there and they have to keep track of each one of those takes. The various camera angles have certain numbers. So they're taking all these really refined notes with specialized dashes and gouges to then give to the director, so that then the director can be like, oh, this was take number 35, scene, whatever. And we're going to like distill all this information with the editor when they're editing. And there's all, there might be 30 takes. Like they have to keep track of all that. And that's what the script supervisor does. They have to be very good at distilling information.
So she got to know Vince Gilligan, it sounds like, pretty well.
All of them. Yeah, she knows all of them. They all loved her.
That's awesome. Yeah, I just love the way he tells a story. And one of my most favorite things about what he does is it seems like he takes a lot of these traditionally comedic actors and puts them in these drama roles. And I think I've even read, he's always claimed that it's easier to teach drama to a comedic actor than teach, go the other way around, basically. And if you really think about it, I mean, guys like Bob Odenkirk and
Yeah.
obviously Bryan Cranston, but even
Yeah.
people like Michael McKean, who I remember from Laverne and
Yeah.
Shirley when I was a kid, and
So
then
funny.
he topped it off with Carol Burnett in the last couple episodes. It was
I remember him from Laverne and Shirley too. He was like
yeah,
Squiggy or Lenny. He was
yes,
Lenny
Lenny
of
and Squiggy.
Lenny and Squiggy. Yeah. So I'm kind of
Hmm.
I like movies. I like movies and shows anyways. Uh, that not Breaking Bad, but Better Call Saul, I just think is the cat's meow. Very well done. The story, it's slow
Yeah,
for some people, but I love the way the story unfolds. And I think it's better than Breaking Bad, but a lot of people don't feel that way.
on par with each other. To me, it's just one big story. The one
Yeah.
thing I kind of and what I like about both is there's been so many great shows that didn't always have great endings.
Yeah.
I would say one of my top shows is Sopranos, but I wasn't
Okay.
exactly really excited about that ending. The same thing for like
Yeah.
Lost, not a great ending.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
And both Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul,
Yeah. Great
the way
endings.
they ended it was just incredible. And I don't know that he even knew how he was going to end both shows, but he managed
Uh,
to close them out really well. And I always tell people, you know, I happen to think that Better Call Saul, I don't think he intended it to be, but at the end, if you really watch it closely, it was kind of a love story, and you just didn't know you were watching it until the very end.
right.
But it really was
Interesting.
between, Jimmy and Kim.
Uh,
You just you got all these drug dealers in between, but it really was kind of a love story.
Interesting. I'm if you would really enjoy the book Comedy Drama by Bob Odenkirk. Uh,
He's an incredible guy.
it's
He's actually not
it
he's not very far from me where or he didn't grow up very far away from where I grew up.
okay. Where's that?
I grew up in a suburb of Chicago. It's called River
Okay.
Forest, Illinois. It's maybe about 8 miles directly west of downtown. And I
Okay.
believe Bob Odenkirk was from the area in which he described in Better Call Saul. I think he was from Berwyn, if I'm not mistaken.
He talks about doing comedy in Chicago a little bit. He's
Yeah.
traveled around quite a bit, but he was a comedy writer. He was a writer for SNL. He wrote The
Hmm.
Van Down by the River. Like he wrote that. Like, and he knows everybody. And then he had a lot to do with a lot of the weird, but the whole story is about comedy and his, failures and successes and things like that. And it does get into Breaking Bad a little bit, but it's if you listen to the audiobook, it's narrated by Bob Odenkirk. It's very good. Yeah, you'd like it.
Yeah, no, he's an incredible actor. And I
Yeah.
really just, I know Vince Gilligan's actually coming out with a new show, I think on Apple TV this winter, I think, with actually Rhea Seehorn, who plays Kim from Better Call Saul.
Mhm.
So I'm kind of curious to see what comes out of that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good show. If you get a chance, you should watch it, and also Breaking Bad. If you haven't heard of Breaking Bad, it's a fantastic show. It's based on Albuquerque, which is why we're talking about it right now, because there's a lot of and if you ever come to Albuquerque, uh there's a tour you can take in like this, RV, like the Breaking Bad RV, and you could like tour around and see all the areas. I live very close to like the location of Aaron Paul's character, Jesse's house, where his parents lived
Okay.
and all that. Like it's right there. We walk by it when I walk my dogs.
I
But
would just love to see them do a prequel and show Gustavo's backstory as well. But
yeah.
I can't imagine that Giancarlo Esposito is getting any younger, so it might not be easy to do.
No, I've heard. I doubt he'll listen to this. I've heard he's kind of, you get to hear about the personalities of the people. But I didn't meet him. I did meet Bob Odenkirk a couple of times. I went bowling with him once, like
Yeah,
very, very shy. And then Aaron Paul and Jesse Plemons, I met them once. Like they had like
yeah.
a little party. But I'm, for the most part, she kept me away from the celebrities because, you know, I'm just kind of a numbskull, so whatever.
I, it'd probably be a good idea to keep me away from him too.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think I said funny story. She took me to a party with Aaron Paul. It was some party or donation thing. It was all paid for. It was at the bowling alley. They all like to go bowling. Jesse Plemons was there. The only time I met the guy, and I thought it was, for the life of me, I don't know why, but I thought it was his birthday, and I wished him a happy birthday. He had no clue what I was talking about, but he was very polite about it. He didn't say anything. And I went on about my day, and then the evening, everybody had a good time. And on the way home, I was like, she's like, "Did you say anything to him?" I was like, "Yeah, I wished him a happy birthday." And she's like, "It's not his birthday." That was it.
I think celebrities are just used to people being weird around them, so
Yeah.
I think they learn to take that in stride.
The energy, when you're around a celebrity, the energy is palpable. It's very weird, and I totally understand why people get enraptured in that shit. And if you're in the industry, it's like almost like this quest for, name dropping and who you've worked with. And there's a show out called The Show. It's about the industry. It's about being in the industry. It's a producer. He's a producer. He produces movies and shows. He's like an executive, and it's all about the drama and the kissing of the asses and how movies get to the next level. The bureaucracy, all of that, It's very interesting. The ups and downs and the chaos of that world. But we're here to talk about Sunil. we're here to hear your story. And I don't know too much. I mean, I have background in drywall finishing. I was in the union. I was an apprentice. I do what I do. We ran into each other. I think you were talking to Brad Kennedy when I met you at Build 25. Do you remember meeting me?
I do remember meeting you, yeah.
It was very briefly. We met each other, and somebody said, "Oh, Sunil's got some stories. He'd be good for the podcast." I think I remember that.
Yeah. Actually, I think we met in 24 as well.
Okay.
But I think I was pretty sick that day, and
I was not at Build 24.
Oh, maybe, were you at 23 then?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That was when I was actually sick.
I had a booth at 23.
Yeah, we met briefly at 23, and then I do remember meeting you at 25 as well. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right, so let's dig in. Your background, like you already said you're kind of from Chicago.
Oh yeah. We got 2 apprentice schools, DC 30, DC 14. They do a great job getting these guys ready to be in the field. And I've grown up here my entire life. I was born in a little place called Oak Park, Illinois, which is right by River Forest, which is where I actually grew up. And outside of college, pretty much been in this area my whole life.
Okay. All right. And
yeah.
Drywall. Did you got into drywall?
No. That's a little bit of a longer backstory. So if I start to bore you, feel free to stop me.
Oh, I'll change directions. If it gets boring, we'll start talking about film again or something. It's not going to be boring. If you don't know, Sunil is the president of Drywall Master Tools, which is a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've had some other. We've had a couple. We've had Columbia, Aaron and Elliott. We've had Mark Wilson has been on. We've had Joe Koenig with Trim Tags. He's fantastic. I love talking to the people that are. I also love talking to the drywall finishers. Those stories are entertaining and great, and which tools they use and why. Establish a background for the Drywall Master Tools. I want to know a little bit about how did you get did you graduate high school and then go into college? What did you study?
Well, let me go back a little farther.
Fine.
I'm
Totally
happy to talk
fine.
about my background.
Yeah.
Really, this whole thing, this whole industry, or at least this part of the, for me, started actually with my father, a gentleman by the name of Larry D'Souza. So it's actually, even though we're Indian, it's a Portuguese name. And
Okay.
the part of India we were from was actually colonized by the Portuguese.
Okay.
And that was back in the 1600s. So
Okay.
that's why we have these Portuguese names, even though we look Indian.
Okay. And
And
then just give
you know,
your dad's name really quick again.
D'Souza, Larry D'Souza, Lawrence
Larry.
D'Souza. So, my dad, he came to this country as an immigrant in 1961. And he came he came as a student. And as a student, he worked various different jobs. And then at some point in the early 70s, he managed to get into the construction industry. At one point, he was working for a gentleman by the name of Harold Trusty. And Harold, at the time in the 70s, was probably one of the largest drywall contractors in the entire Midwest. I mean, he had over 200 people on his payroll. And my dad was one of the guys who's kind of helping him to manage his books and do a few other things as well.
Was that
Eventually,
union? Was that union
I
at that
believe
time?
so. But again, I've gotten all this information secondhand after
Yeah.
it happened 20 years later. So
Sure.
if I'm speaking out of turn in any way, it's not
No,
on purpose.
I don't
It's
know.
just I honestly don't know the answers, right? But this is how I was led to believe things took place.
Okay.
But yeah, he went to go work for Harold. I believe he was doing some bookkeeping for Harold. Eventually, I think my dad started his own materials company.
Okay.
I think it was called American Building Materials, if I'm not mistaken. And he was selling Harold a lot, along with many other contractors in the Illinois area and around the Midwest, just, corner bead and other such goods. And, him and Harold remained very close friends. Now, in the meantime, as I'm sure you've heard from the other podcasts, and I've listened to your previous podcast with, Columbia and Mark and everybody
Okay.
else. The patents on the AMES tools were starting to run out. And at the time, you could only rent
Yeah.
these tools. You could not buy them. And so Harold was in the process of starting Tape Master because,
Okay.
he obviously rented a ton of AMES tools. And so,
These guys,
Harold was a
these
good
guys
guy.
were all chomping at the bit to make their own set of tools as soon as the Ames,
Yeah.
which is weird to me because the last thing on my radar would be making automatic drywall tools. I mean, it seems like easy. Oh, it's just a bazooka. I can make that pretty easy. But the logistically nightmare. Like,
Yeah.
talking to Bernie, I'm like, why in the hell would you want to make drywall tools? Like, what,
And it was. And, when Harold got involved in this, he was a pretty neat guy. Like, a lot of people in the construction industry, he was kind of a self-made man. I was told, and again, I don't want to speak out of turn, but this is, secondhand information that, he didn't even finish high school. And I don't think he ever went to college, but he really had a good understanding of basic engineering and drafting. And he worked with a lot of other people as well. And he was trying to get this off the ground. And while he was trying to get it off the ground, he was experiencing some issues, both personally and then also with his drywall company. And eventually, I think he was starting to have some problems with his finances.
yeah.
And, my father kind of got involved. And as I understand it, he ended up buying basically all of Harold's stock of what he'd already kind of started with Tape Master and
Okay.
hadn't necessarily completely finished. But he also made Harold a partner as well.
Okay.
And he managed to bring in some really great engineers that he knew.
Okay.
And they studied the AMES tools.
Wait, your dad
And
brought in engineers?
yeah, brought in some engineers that he knew
Okay.
as well.
So
And
he had kind of an entrepreneurial bent, like your dad.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, my father always wanted to run his own business, but you got to remember, I mean, a lot of immigrants, that's usually their path.
Yeah.
The job market isn't always as easy for them. So having your own
Okay.
business makes a big difference. And
Right.
so, but Harold and him were always really close. And, the thing is, no matter how good of an engineer you bring in to try and reverse engineer or try to make a product, if you don't understand the application of it, you're not going to get a great end result. And, what Harold brought to the table is he understood
I love that.
how these tools had to work, because again, they had been running these multiple sets of AMES tools for a very long time. And, within a couple of years, I would say that they had successfully reverse engineered these tools. And
okay. Where did they start? Did they start with a bazooka?
Now you're getting the questions that I don't know the answer to.
Okay, that's fine. Doesn't matter.
But I do. But they had the full set.
They had a full set. Okay.
And at that same time, Columbia was emerging, Tape Tech was emerging, Premier was emerging.
Now, stop me if I'm wrong. Tape Tech was not associated with AMES. That was a separate company out of Seattle or something, right?
Yeah, but from what I understand, and I might, Bernie or somebody else might be able to correct me, and is that I don't think they were independent that long. I do believe that they got purchased by AMES fairly quickly, but I couldn't say how long they were actually as an independent company.
We talked about it a little bit with Bernie, but he's more like, we're joking about how these guys are bullies. These AMES guys, they were bullies because they owned it all, and they could charge what they wanted. It's smart that they did the tool rental, because it was just it was a monopoly on these tools. But the downside to me, it seemed like, was it sort of forced these independent contractors to be like, screw you, I'm going to go make my own tools no matter what. And it just forced this a gaggle of people that wanted to make their own tools.
You have to remember, the AMES brothers at that point had actually sold their company to, I guess, the Axia Corporation, as I understand it. And they had, after their non-competes had run out, with their engineer, a gentleman by the name of Carl Rath, they had started Premier. And Premier was a very different tool from what they had built before. And they were it was intended to be almost like a second generation product. Unfortunately for them,
AMES started AMES started Premier.
The AMES brothers, the original people who started the AMES tool.
Okay.
As I understand it, they started Premier, which was the forerunner to what we probably now know as Tape Pro, but in between was also Blue Line as well.
Right. Okay, I knew that. And then in Australia, there's an Australian influence. Freeman was involved with that.
Yeah, and as I understand it, I believe the Freeman was one of the largest Premier distributors overseas. So when Premier was eventually ceased operations, because they had created a market for those tools heavily in Australia, I think they kind of got involved, and I believe Freeman Products also was a very large distributor. They, along with the people from Tape Pro, kind of formed a group, and then they started Blue Line / Tape Pro.
Okay.
By the way, you're encouraged to have these guys on your show, and they can correct anything I'm giving you bad information on. Well, I'm a history major, so I like trying to, but I also hate making stuff up, and because I don't know the details to the level I'd like to. I don't want to give you bad information. So
just as a precursor to just talk freely, we all know that you're going to distill as much information as you can. If it's not accurate, I've never had somebody email me and be like, Nick, you're talking out your ass. That wasn't true. That didn't happen. I've never had that happen. So just between you and me, there is no history about this stuff. I mean,
there isn't. And I have a good amount of respect for anyone that got into this industry at the same time. And honestly, even though we all compete against each other very aggressively, I do believe there's a level of mutual respect that we all have for one another. And I certainly don't want to step on any toes. Right. You mentioned that you did reach out to Dwayne, but I would recommend maybe reaching out to the people now in Australia. if you ever do want to have their side of the story. And I think they could probably give you a more comprehensive perspective on the emergence of Premiere. But
the Tape Pro guy, the Tape Pro guys, right?
Tape Pro, yeah.
Yeah.
And they're really great guys.
Great guys. Yeah, I've met them before too. Yeah, great guys, great tools, like all that stuff. Yeah. Carry on.
Yes. Sorry, now I'm losing my place a little bit. But
no,
anyways,
we were talking about the early the different companies that were emerging.
Yeah. So yeah, you had all these companies that were kind of emerging at the same time. Again, and I think I mentioned Hawk Tool, which would eventually become Tapeworm, which was purchased by Mirko. And then I think Bernie mentioned another company that started with an N, which I think was started by, if I'm not mistaken, Mark McMillan's dad, who would be the guy who was the main engineer for Concord, and eventually the guy that owns and was the engineer for North Star as well. So, I think you had all these companies kind of emerging around that time. But outside of Tape Tech, which was eventually bought by AMES, I think Tape Master probably got the biggest jump out of the gate during the 80s, just because of the interchangeability and the similarity to the AMES tool, and the fact that it wasn't a company that was controlled by AMES. You got to remember, even though they had what was probably a good tool back then in Tape Tech, which was essentially, once they bought it, they were just making an AMES tool and selling it. But they didn't necessarily want to sell it. It was more of like, hey, if you're going to buy another brand of tools and you insist on buying, well, this is what we got. But it wasn't, it wasn't a goal of theirs. They always wanted to just rent these tools. And so not everybody wanted to buy. And, clearly my dad and the other 4 or 5 companies out there did want to sell. So, I would say that
they wanted to sell tools. They didn't want to sell the company, because also
sell tools.
AMES was maybe going around making offers on these tool companies so that they could retain the rental market, maybe.
And I was going to get to that. Yeah.
Okay.
That eventually did happen, but for a few years, I would say Tape Master probably was the dominant market share in the purchased market outside of Tape Tech, which again, I don't know who had more market share at that point, but I've seen what my father's dealership network was at that point, and it was growing faster than they could keep up with, basically. Because again, everybody wanted to buy these tools, and even though AMES did have Tape Tech, they weren't motivated.
Well, part of
Tech. So
sorry,
it was kind of like, yeah, we have it, but are you sure you want it? And so, if you've got a salesman with that approach versus a salesman saying, hey, I want to sell it to you, who are you going to buy from? And it was growing very, very quickly. But it was a little bit overwhelming during those years. I mean, it wasn't just domestic. We were getting contacted. My father was getting contacted constantly from people overseas as well, and it took its toll on both him and Harold. Eventually, Harold's family was trying to get him to maybe take a step back, and eventually he did. He sold his shares in or whatever relationship he had with my father. They kind of decided to part ways as friends, and so my dad was kind of left on his own. And my father was handling all the marketing and sales.
When was that?
Probably around either sometime between 86 or 88.
Okay, and just one little question I had in there was that. It seems like your father had, Lawrence had better success with the tools than maybe some of the other people these other companies trying to get out there with the tools back in the, and
Out of
why
the gate,
do
out of the
you think
gate, I would say yes.
you're saying it's because he had maybe a closer or better tweaks to the tools than some of these other companies, but would you say it was also proximity? Like Chicago was kind of a hub?
And I don't even know that I want to sit around and say it was better tweaks. I don't want to try to badmouth what other people were coming out with. I think it was more, drywall contractors, and again, after being in this industry for close to 25 years now and coming in from the cold, one thing I've learned is they tend to be creatures of habit, right? I mean, once they learn on a certain product, they want to stay with that certain product.
Yeah.
And it's hard to acclimate to something new. And, at that point in time, even though the Ames brothers had developed the premier tool, it was a different tool. It was a different style of tool. And there were certainly a lot of advantages to that style. Some things that I would argue were probably advancements. But if you had a guy that had learned on an Ames tool, it was a transition that they weren't always ready to make. Right. And again, it had nothing to do with the quality. It had nothing to do with the performance.
Okay.
It just was. It's more about muscle memory, right? Like one of my favorite things to do is throw a football around, right? And I think I could throw a good spiral with my right arm, but ask me to throw it with my left, it's not getting more than 5 or 6 feet. And, it's the same thing. I mean, you put a different style of tool in someone's hands, it goes against everything they know, and it has nothing to do with the quality. And so, the same goes for like the tapeworm. It's a very well manufactured product, actually. Okay. But again, it just was a little bit different at that time from what the guys had learned on. And it's
no Drywall Master tool.
Well, I want to be careful what I say, because I'm not trying to make any enemies on this topic.
We got Sunil on the show. We're talking about Drywall Masters. For all intents and purposes, it's the best tool, like on the show. On the show.
I am going to make that argument, and I intend to make that argument at some point in this podcast. But I want to say that we're better, not necessarily that other people aren't offering things that are good, and in many cases even advantageous. Well, so when you're asking me, hey,
this is interesting too, because like it's and sorry if I cut you off too. I like jumping in there because it's like I got a thought and I want to like in this industry, it's very intimate, and I'm learning like very quickly, especially with the podcast and getting into more higher interviews. And you said it early on, it's very competitive. There's a lot of respect. And it's very competitive. So I want to deliver. This is a show for drywallers. I want to deliver the most accurate information without being like, oh, I'm a this guy or I'm a that guy. This is a diplomatic show where we can have Sunil on here and we could talk about Tape Master, and it could be sponsored by Ames, and I can be friends with Aaron and Elliot. And, like all of that stuff. I think that the listener is going to get more out of a show that's super diplomatic and open to the story of Drywall Master tools versus, having favorites or this and that. Like my job is like an announcer. Like I got to be unbiased, like that.
I mean, I'll still try to make my plugs and arguments for what we bring to the industry, but I just want to be careful about how I go about doing that. And and again, to go to your question, well, why did we jump out of the gate as quickly as we did? I think it was simply and honestly, I'll go out and even tell you. I mean, Carl Raff, I ran into him because he used to do the trade shows all the time. He was a really neat guy, and he worked alongside the Ames brothers. And, I'd run into him at the shows. And one time I ran into him at a restaurant after the show, and he was with his daughter and son. And he just said, man, we should have just done what your dad did. We should have just made an Ames tool. And we didn't. We went in a different direction. And by the way, they Carl did make Raff, a very good product.
For our listeners, who's Carl Raff?
He was an engineer who worked alongside the Ames brothers, both companies.
Okay.
So, but again, that was why we probably jumped out of the gate. And just so you know, the other guys clearly grew and still grew their market shares and developed some very loyal customers. but I'm just answering the question on why we jumped out of the gate the way we did.
They struggled more. I think they struggled more. Maybe it was based on who they knew or their separation from the AMES Corporation.
But also, I think they were able to find new customers who weren't already using taping tools, because the market was still something of a virgin market, right?
Yeah.
So if you had a guy that had never used a taping tool before, and he picked up a Premier, he picked up a Columbia, he picked up a tapeworm, and that was the first tool he knew.
Right.
He probably wasn't going to necessarily like an AMES tool as much, and he's not going to probably like a Tape Master very much as well.
Right.
So it was what they were getting acclimated to. And so there was, and that was how these companies all grew. So it wasn't necessarily like, hey, this one's the greatest. But it was more of like, how does this resemble what you've used before? And our market strategy was to kind of go after the guys that were, primarily renting the tools at the time, because that looked like the easiest way to go about it. And clearly we were able to help build the market as well. But that was why I think we kind of saw the success that we did in the 80s and sort of developed that. What I would say was probably, at least by the mid 80s, I'd say Tape Tech had a fairly dominant market share as an independent company. And eventually, what happened was, like I said, Harold was going through some issues where, he wanted to go in a different direction for a while. And when that happened, the growth did not stop. But without Harold managing the operational side of things, it became a real headache for my dad. And the factory was located in a place called Hazel Crest, Illinois.
Okay.
And it was about almost a good hour away. So, he'd leave very, very early in the morning and come home very, very late at night.
How old are you at this time?
Maybe about sixth grade.
Okay.
So, and I have an older brother who's probably either right at the end of high school or early in college. And
is he involved? Is he involved?
No. He's in the pharma sector.
What's your brother's name?
His name is Anil. So Anil and Sunil.
Nice. Shout out to Anil.
Yeah.
Is he gonna listen? Is he gonna listen to his bro's episode?
Probably not. I don't see it. I mean, we're actually very close, just so you know. It's not like we have any issues.
Tell him he needs to listen, because this is a good episode so far. I like it.
No, he's got his own career, but he definitely did try to help my father out back in the day, in the old Tape Master days. And I think he was even though he was so young, he was an incredible sounding board by the time he was in college for my dad and some of the decisions that he was.
I want to fast forward a little bit to why Sunil got, how you got involved. Your bro was a little bit involved. You already said you were a history major in college. That has nothing to do.
There, if you want to let me finish where I was going.
Okay, go on.
All right. So yeah, I mean, basically we, my dad was getting a little overwhelmed. And so what he ended up doing was, when AMES finally did approach him, and they'd approached him several times before, I think he was like, okay, this is hard. And, and POs were coming in like crazy, and new dealers. And I think even some of the European guys were really knocking on my dad's door pretty hard, saying, hey, we want to distribute Tape Master. And that was getting AMES' attention in a big way, because they were trying to establish those exact same European accounts, and they were losing them, basically. Or at least Tape Tech was.
Okay.
So, yeah, and that was striking a little bit of fear, I think, where it's like, hey, we're going to lose an international market if we don't buy these guys. And my dad was just like, hey, I don't know if I can service this international market without the help. Your
dad's got to be like, how much? Like, let's do this.
He wanted to. I mean, I think he saw the potential growth, right? Okay. He saw that if he hadn't sold, I think Europe would have probably been ours. And I honestly think that even domestically, we probably would have challenged Tape Tech pretty well. And it's hard to believe that, I think they would have gone backwards. But in order to do that, you've got to maintain quality control, you got to maintain customer service, and you got to maintain efficiency. And you need to have bodies that can help you to do those things. And, Harold was that guy. And without, having him there to do that, my dad had to wear a lot of different hats. And it got to him. So, yeah, naturally, when they did come to him, he eventually did make that deal, and he did sell the company.
Okay.
And so,
he did.
yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So,
all right.
So Tape Master eventually became also part of that organization, and he did have to sign a non-compete as well. And for a while, Tape Master actually even became what I do believe is that they stopped all production of what was considered the Chicago Tape Master tool, and essentially did what they were doing with Tape Tech, where it just basically was an AMES tool with the Tape Master name. And so they had two separate dealership networks. They had Tape Master and Tape Tech. And they had different dealers in different areas for both. And they kept that up for several years.
I didn't know that.
But Tape Tech, Tape Tech had a bigger dealership network just because that was already established at the time. But Tape Master was also being sold.
All right. Story's getting interesting because it's like your dad's like, okay, he just like sold he's got money now. Like he's good. Go kick it in Hawaii for a couple years. Like, come on, family, we're traveling around the world.
That wasn't my father. And, look, he basically just kind of was a little bit bored during those years. Right. I remember coming home and, you could tell he was not sure what to do. I mean, he tried building houses for a while. He tried his hand consulting for other, businesses. And, he didn't do poorly in any of these things.
Right.
But I don't think it kept him as occupied as he had been so used to being from doing this. And so it was tough. And, eventually somewhere, I believe, late 90s, probably almost around 99, early 2000, him and Harold always remained friends. And Harold reapproached my father with a reinvigorated interest, I guess, in possibly doing it again. And I remember my mother and I were like, "Are you crazy? You're not getting any younger."
How old's Lawrence at this time when Harold comes back and asks him?
He's in his 60s. So late 60s. And I had just recently graduated from college. And when I graduated from college, I actually went into sales in the IT industry. Okay. So I worked for several different hardware manufacturers in telecom and IT. And so it was right around the late 90s. I don't know. How old are you, Nick?
49.
Okay, so we're about the same age. I'm 50.
Okay.
So you remember what the late 90s were like for the IT industry. If you knew how to turn on a computer, people wanted to hire you. It was kind of a crazy time with the dot-com stuff.
I didn't even. That computer stuff took a while for me. I was like, I still get super challenged with the computer. I mean, I'm very good at it, but does not cater to that.
I didn't have a technical background, right? I was a liberal arts guy in college. I thought I was going to go into law, to be honest with you. But as I started studying more about the law, I became a little more disenchanted with whether or not that was a career choice for me. And thankfully, the market just for the whole .com tech industry was just exploding at that point.
Yeah,
and it was probably one of the last really great job markets for college graduates. Especially if you didn't have any level of experience for what they were hiring you for.
You enjoyed that? You enjoyed writing code?
I did. I wasn't writing code. I was doing primarily sales. But I really did enjoy it because, you were on the forefront of all this emerging technology. I mean, I remember just having to explain to people what the internet was. Right?
Exciting.
Nobody even knew how to access a website, let alone a search engine.
This reminds me of, I just watched a thing on Steve Jobs introducing the iPhone. So I had the first iPhone. My buddy Jeremy like I was doing a patch job, and he was like, "I'll trade you," because he stood in line, and so the 4 gig, like there was like a 4 and a 6 gig iPhone, like the first one, and Jeremy was like, "I got an
I
extra."
remember purchasing a 2 gig computer and having that be a big deal.
Well, like so he gave me one for the patch because he had bought an extra iPhone, and I remember the touch screen, and I just remember not knowing anything really about computers, that it blew my mind. Like that blew my mind that you could do that, and I was instantly sucked in. And you had to have a computer with those early phones. You like had to have a computer to like download and upload data like back and forth.
Oh yeah, how I got exposed to it was, for me, when I was a junior in college, everybody was talking about the internet and web, and I didn't know anything about it, and I really wasn't all that interested. And I remember I'm a big sports guy, and I would always get home to watch ESPN Sports Center at 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
And then someone told me, like, hey, they have a website, and like you type www.espn.com, and I was like, whoa, I can get all this information. I don't have to pay for
Done.
it. And I'm like, wait, CNN's got a website too? And then just all this information, for free at your fingertips. And then anything you were curious about, you could get. And then I found out, they were working on technology that you could actually make phone calls over the internet, which is what we're doing right now. Yeah. And there were all these different ideas. Go ahead.
Did you listen to the Brandon episode with Brandon Hunter, Serpro?
No, I know Brandon very well, but I didn't listen to his. No.
Well, we talk about like all wall, like creating like not but creating the early website, like Drywall website, back in the because he was part of that movement.
Yeah.
Like thing.
Well, they were probably one of our first distributors is Drywall Master. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it, probably because I found them on the web. But
he's so long-winded that it's a 2-part episode, like as you know. But like it's pretty good if you get a chance. So you graduated college. You're kind of in the tech world. Harold is like approaching Lawrence with like, hey man, let's do this thing again. How can he do Drywall Masters if they sold the company?
Well, the non-competes were up by then.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was,
and they
that
can use
this issue.
They can use the same name.
No, they went Drywall Master.
What was the original? What was the original name?
Tape Master.
Tape Master. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Good clarifying questions. Okay, so they went with Drywall Master, and they're like, we're gonna do it again. Why?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, I think they saw the potential the first time around, and I think Harold sort of felt like, hey, we got some unfinished business, and I think my dad was kind of bored, and so you had the perfect combination. But I think they also may have overestimated at that point in their lives and at what their ages were, what they were going to be able to do. And, I was, like I said, in the tech industry. And, initially that whole industry started off with a bang. And you probably remember by the early 2000s, there was a bust. And, I all of a sudden, from getting calls from recruiters and, stock options and all that other good stuff, it seemed like the layoffs were coming quite often, not just for me, but everybody in that industry. And, I wasn't sure what I was going to be doing because it didn't look like there was as much going on. And I was considering maybe just, getting like an MBA or looking at graduate school. But my dad was trying to get me to maybe come in on board for them. Yeah. And the one thing I did know how to do was cold call. And at the time, they were pretty close to being done with the tools, but they were having a struggle trying to get their distribution channel off the ground.
Yeah, people don't realize how important sales is. Like anybody can have a product, man, but if you don't move it,
well, and it was easier, I think, the first time around, right? I mean, at Tape Master, The market almost, I mean, my dad definitely did his share of selling, and he always told me stories about how he would go about it. But to some degree, once they got things kind of off the ground, it sort of went on autopilot with Tape Master.
Okay.
And, but the market needed that brand. And so, but this time around with Drywall Master, it wasn't as easy. And it wasn't coming as quickly to them. Plus, I think they were running into a little issues here and there too, trying to, just get the tools where they needed to be. So they were having two issues, and when I came on board, I just started hitting the phones right away and basically selling a product I didn't exactly completely understand.
Okay.
But selling it nevertheless. And
yeah,
honestly,
did you have the dudes like out in the yard? They were like, you're like, hey man, show me how to run this thing. And they're like
yeah, I did try it. I mean, I've tried running them a couple times, and I'll be honest, I'm not very good at it still.
Okay. All right.
It takes a lot of skill. It forced me to respect what these guys do for a living.
Yeah.
But I like I said, I wasn't scared to pick up a telephone, and really all I wanted to do was get people to give us a shot and give us a chance. And I think actually I wasn't bad at doing that. In fact, I think I was quite good at it.
Of course.
And I was able to get people to give us an opportunity. Now, at the time, we were definitely dealing with some other sales-related issues in the sense that it wasn't just us coming into the market trying to compete. We were all of a sudden going against several other vendors who just popped up coincidentally around the same time. Blue Line was /Tape Pro was the predecessor or the successor, I guess, to the original Premier tool, which had left the industry. You had North Star, which had been kind of the successor to Concord. And then you also had Level 5, or actually at the time they were called Finish Pro, that was also emerging. And I think right around that time, Columbia was really starting to hit their stride.
Yeah. This is like
really
kind of like second generation, like of the, you had the first emerging, and then you had these like second generation companies and tools coming out. That's kind of cool. A way to look at it. This is like early 2000s.
Cool. And at the same time, you had the big company, Tape Tech and AMES.
Sure.
They were the reason why all these companies, I think, were starting to see emerge and also grow was that I think they thought they'd gotten rid of everybody, and they weren't expecting any more competition, and they were feeling a little bit of a threat. And what people don't realize was that even at this point, now this is 5 years, they really still wanted to protect that rental industry in a big, big way. And they still, even though they were selling tools, it was still kind of like, are you sure? You sure you want to buy these tools? I mean, yeah, we can sell them to you, but come on, you get these factory fresh tools if you rent them instead. You don't do it. And, from their perspective, I mean,
it seems like a good idea. I've rented the tools before. They were renting when I started in the union. They were union would rent it because people beat the hell out of the tools. They could just have a program and get fresh tools onto. They're running out miles of commercial drywall. That seems like a good deal. That seems like that would be a good deal. And then you don't have tools that you're responsible for. I mean, you have to give them back, but they're expensive tools.
There's a cost, right? And that's the issue. I mean, I get the concept of, if you don't have to maintain them, great. But, the way we look at it is, let's say right now the cost of the tools is $500 a month, right? That's right around, I think, about six. I'm like the only Indian guy that's not great at math, but that's like about $6,000 a year. And
that's exactly how much it is.
Okay, and then over a 5-year period, I'm guessing that's what, like $30,000. So let's say you buy a set of tools for $4,500. How much money are you going to spend on maintenance over a 5-year period for one set of tools? there's no way you're coming close to 30 grand.
That's the salesman coming out in you, Sunil. That's the salesman right there.
Yeah. I do see the benefit for renting tools.
Sure.
But I don't believe that there's enough of a benefit if you're renting the tools every single day. And also, if you really look at it, there's really only two tools that I feel require any sort of level of in-depth maintenance. And that's probably going to be the taper and the angle heads. There's no reason for you to be renting a gooseneck. There's no reason for you to be renting an adapter. There's no reason for you guys to be
the real question. The real question that maybe you couldn't answer, maybe somebody from AMES could, but why would you still be pushing rentals so much when there's certainly a market for sales?
Well, I think I just answered that question actually. If you're making 30 grand over a 5-year period on something that you've already paid for several times over, and you're only after whatever your margin is on $4,500.
They still got the maintenance. They got maintenance on all those tools that they have to maintain. But if you're making the tools,
the maintenance is nothing in comparison to what the margins are.
Okay.
And so, there's no incentive at all. And again, they've got companies that were renting over 100 sets. So you can only imagine the revenue that's going to be coming in. From every single company that's renting tools. So even if they're not losing a set of tools from rental to, say, Drywall Master or Columbia or North Star or Tapro or Level 5, they're still losing it. If they lose it to Tape Tech, they're still losing money. So
interesting. Yeah, that was a good answer. No, like, even if I pick up one person, then like that's better. That's like selling, 10 sets of tools or whatever, over a span of time.
I'm sure if you have them back on the show, they'll have a different argument for that. But I have a hard time seeing the math being justified. I do get with larger companies, sometimes it's hard to kind of manage what every guy's doing. So in that sense, kind of makes sense.
Well, I would give you a scenario. Playing devil's advocate is that like a lot of guys, especially that are older, they're like more fatigued. They're going to the patch world where, you don't need tools. You don't need a set of tools around all the time. Maybe you do a garage occasionally. Well, I'll rent a tool for the week to do a garage or a larger project. But for the most part, I'm doing just patchwork. I
would play the devil's advocate for that argument as well, actually.
Okay.
I can't argue with that, but I would argue with it if you're doing it on a daily basis. It's really much harder to justify. But you're right.
Yeah.
I mean, if you treat your rental tools the same way you treat renting a car when you're on vacation or when your car breaks down, I mean that's when it really absolutely does make sense, and you should be doing it.
It's true.
But it's harder. And again, I think we've kind of seen that market kind of diminish. Again, I don't know what the numbers are, but just from what I've seen, it feels like it's not as big as it was when I started 25 years ago or when my dad started Tape Master. Well, my dad was one of the people who started Tape Master.
Okay.
So, but...
all right. Well, I mean, this is a good place to be like, okay, well, I mean... I don't want to glaze over. Like, is Lawrence still involved, or is it just like you?
No,
he took over.
Passed away he passed away in 2014.
Okay, so. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. R.I.P. Lawrence. And then, is that when you took over? Was he like worked right to the end?
Yeah. I mean, he gave me he was not in the best of health even by the time I took over. And both Harold and him were actually probably dealing with health issues that we weren't completely aware of. So I don't know what you could really put a date on when I started taking on more and more of a role. It seemed like it was really gradual. When he passed away in 2014, it was from a neurodegenerative disorder, very similar to Parkinson's, but not Parkinson's. And, we didn't even know what it was until maybe the last 2 years. But the condition, as we learned about it, we realized it wasn't just affecting his body, but it very well could have been affecting his mind.
Okay.
Anywhere between 15 to 20 years before the time in which, we saw the effects of it.
Okay.
But we didn't know that at the time. So
did you like working with your dad?
I wish I could say yes. I love my father very much. And I can't say enough about everything that he's done here and what he's done for me. But because I think he was suffering from the conditions of his ill health while we were working together, and I just didn't know it at the time, it created a lot of stress and a lot of tension as well. And I just didn't know that at the time. And I don't obviously have anything bad. I really love my father. I really cared about him. But it was very difficult for us to work together. So it was a rough time. Yeah.
Okay. So after his passing, there was probably a significant shift where now Sunil you can
it was
really
before his passing.
It was before his passing.
I mean,
and Harold, did you buy him out? How did that go?
Well, Harold actually, he didn't have we basically did kind of buy him out. Yeah.
Okay.
But he was also dealing with some health issues as well.
Okay.
And but he was dealing with it maybe somewhere in the mid 2000s, if not earlier, as I recall.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. So now it's like this clear horizon. Sunil has control of the company. What do you do? You're doing things already, but you probably some big shifts post Lawrence and Harold.
We were trying to figure out how we were going to market ourselves and how we were going to try and differentiate ourselves. And also, we wanted to perfect the tools as well. Now, somewhere in the mid 2000s, we ended up coming across a really amazing guy who really kind of helped us to kind of make a bigger dent in the industry. It was a fellow by the name of Johnny Payne. Now, Johnny, he was a Korean War vet. And he was actually in some of the biggest battles of the Korean War. In fact, he was in the Battle of the Chosin Reservoir, which is probably one of the most intense battles of American history. And as he gets out of the Korean War and comes back stateside, he ends up working for AMES Taping Tools. And he's working alongside people like Stan and Bob Ames and Carl Raff, actually. And he starts off working for them as a shipping clerk. But eventually he works his way up through the organization, and eventually he became what I would say was a 12-state regional manager for AMES. And when he was there, he was very much involved with, a lot of the changes that happened with the tools as well. Because back then, a lot of the store guys, they didn't just manage a store; they actually had to repair the tools.
This guy's got to be like. This guy's like a dinosaur, though. You're saying like all of a sudden this guy wanders in out of the woods. He comes in out of the woods.
I was about to tell you about how I met him.
Okay.
I was at a trade show locally here in Chicago,
all right.
And keep in mind, I'm still somewhat green with these tools, right?
Yeah.
And Johnny was probably about 72.
Yeah, you're like 30-ish, right?
Yeah, probably late 30s. Yeah, mid 30s. And he comes over to me and, kind of gives me like a dirty look. And keep in mind, as I got to know him, this is a guy that's never made a bad first impression on anybody in his life except me. And so he comes over and, he gives me like this dirty look. And then, he starts asking me about the tools. I grab an angle head. And he grabs the angle head out of my hand and tells me that I'm holding it wrong. And I'm thinking, well, who the hell does this guy think he is? And then
he's Johnny Payne.
Well, he's telling me about his history, and he's like, I work with the guys who invented these tools, and I've been with them at the very beginning. And he's like, you're holding it wrong, and he goes, and he's like, I know how to repair these tools. I can tell you how everything. And to me, he's coming across a little cocky, right? And it was kind of rubbing me the wrong way. But at the same time, after I left the show, we were still dealing with certain quality control issues. We were still trying to figure certain things out. And the next day, and then I also asked him, I started asking him who we knew in the industry. And one of the guys that I mentioned was a gentleman by the name of Jeff Wheeler, who was the guy that started Allwall. Now, Jeff had actually also been an AMES store manager back when they used to repair the tools out of the stores. So Jeff knew the tools really well. And he was always one of the many people I would use as a sounding board whenever, we were asking about tools, parts, components, just because of his repair experience. And we had a lot of guys like that. And so I always respected Jeff's opinion.
Okay.
And so when I mentioned Jeff's name to Johnny, Johnny's like, "Oh, I trained Jeff Wheeler." And I'm like, "Really? You trained Jeff Wheeler?" And so, the next day, first call I make is to Jeff. And I'm like, "So I met this guy. His name is Johnny Payne. And he's claiming he trained you." And Jeff's like, "Yeah, he taught me everything I know." and then Jeff goes, "You need to hire Johnny, and you need to give him a nice office with a window, and you need to make sure you don't let him go."
That's awesome. That's a funny story.
Yeah, and it happened just like that. And so,
okay,
so then I have to sheepishly call this guy who I probably was giving a pretty dirty look to the entire time I was talking to him,
sure,
and tell him, I'm like, "Hey, look, we're still growing. We still have, I think, a lot of things to learn. Yeah. If you'd be interested, we'd love to have you come by and share some of your knowledge and experience."
That salesman came back out in you, Sunil. You catered to, if there's nothing that a drywall person loves more, it's a good ego rub. It's like, well, hey Johnny, man, I need your help.
Nothing I was saying that wasn't true. It wasn't just an ego rub. I mean, it was the truth. I mean, we did need the help.
Yeah.
And, he came by and, I remember even just trying to talk how we were going to compensate him and everything like that. And, it didn't seem like he was even worried about that. I think he really just wanted to be involved with the tools again.
Yeah.
And I quickly learned that my first impression of him could never have been more wrong about anybody in my entire life. He turned out to be one of the most amazing men I've ever known. And, I still almost tear up when I talk about him.
It wasn't just about the tools though with Johnny.
No, it was. He loved being around them, and I think once he realized who we were and that we appreciated what he was doing for us. And again, it was never like, "Hey, I need a job." It's like more, "What can I do for you?" And I think a lot of people didn't always take him up on that. We were ready to take him up on that.
Right.
We knew there was.
Well, with a larger, it's like the changing climates of businesses grow, things happen, it's just business, that sort of thing. You saw the value, you took on Johnny. It sounds like maybe is he still with us?
No, he passed away too. Okay. In fact, I told that same story about how he made such a poor impression on me at his funeral, and everybody seemed to appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll bet. Shout out to Johnny.
Because really, I don't think there's a person that ever met Johnny who didn't like him off after the first 10 seconds of meeting him, except me. So, but no, he really helped us a lot, and he gave us a little perspective that we never had before, even at the first company, about how the Ames brothers approached things in terms of the decisions they made, why they made the tools a certain way, how the tools used to be, when they made changes, when it was the Ames brothers who made changes, and then when it was maybe the private equity groups who took over Ames that made the changes, and whether the changes were made to try to make the tools better or whether it was more about from a cost standpoint as well. And he just sort of gave us a little bit more of an idea of how we needed to do things. But on top of that, he helped us to come out with at least 3 patents in his 70s, by the way, which we put under his name while he was here. And he helped us come out with some innovation. In fact, I don't know if you've seen many of our tools, but that Easy Clean cover plate I designed, that was all Johnny, 100%. He came up with that idea. The 5.5-inch box, which we were the first company to come out with, I was the one who facilitated the building of that box. Okay. But when we actually came to market with it, when we were persuaded to come to market with it by a gentleman who used to work for Straightflex, what we realized right off the bat was, how are you going to get a flat box on a 5.5-inch box when there's not enough space with the springs? And Johnny was the one who actually came up with the inner spring concept that we put on our 5.5-inch box, so you could actually put a standard box handle on there. And that was a genius idea. If you look at our 5.5-inch box, I mean, we patented that idea, and it's under his name, and that was all him. And even our Easy Clean cover plate, I'm very biased in believing that's probably the best one on the market. And then also
that's on the Bazooka, correct?
Yeah.
That's
the trademark name, so I'm going to try to call it an automatic taper. So
Bazooka's
a little sensitive sometimes.
Bazooka's trademarked?
It is.
Shut the hell up. I didn't know that. We're learning stuff on the Drywall Podcast today.
You can call it that. I got to be careful.
Yes, I can call it that. I always liked the Bazooka. You know, the tiniest taper over in England, she just did a video recently where she's holding it like a bazooka. I love that.
But then the third patent that Johnny came up with is, when you're running a 500-foot roll of tape, and you get the tape spool continue to move as you come to a complete stop.
Okay. Yes.
Well, Johnny was the one who came up with a mechanism that we could use on our tape spool to control the backspin, so that you basically wouldn't get that backspin. And and again, we patented that as well. And these were all ideas he came up with like in his mid-70s, which was incredible. And then just little things that we did around here. He would always just find ways to do it more efficiently than it had been done before. I mean, we used to bring Johnny to the trade shows, the Intex AWCI shows. Yeah. And even all the guys from AMES would come by just wanting to hear his stories about how the tools evolved and, his experience with the AMES brothers. Everybody just wanted to stop and talk to him. And, Johnny was a single guy, and I'll tell you, he would flirt with all their wives.
Sure.
He would flirt with all the girls who came by. But everybody just loved him.
Sure. Well, so you had the innovation aspect, but you also said marketing too. I was going to kind of talk a little bit about marketing because we've worked a little bit you have Oriana doing the marketing. You guys, I know, use Oriana's services. How come you don't have in-house? Why would you go with like this? I know she's knowledgeable about the industry. Why did you go in that direction? And two-parter, do you like it? You like that direction?
I do. Look, we've always been more of an engineering-driven company than a marketing-driven company, and that's probably a good and bad thing. I think we're putting out a fantastic product. Okay. I don't think we've marketed it very well, and and that's partially on me. But we're trying to change our direction and trying to create more of a demand from the end user. I mean, my strategy from day one was to try to build us up from the ground up. And that wasn't necessarily the best strategy, but it was the one that I took. And for me, it was try to find as many repair guys in the industry who were also possibly distributing, and then also work with as many people that were already stocking automatic taping tools and get them to sell our products.
That's smart.
And I worked and I approached every single person individually. And look, I don't think I'm a horrible sales guy. I think I'm pretty good when it comes to one-on-one communication. And I think I'm very good at trying to establish those relationships with dealers and distributors. But what we didn't do is try to create as much pull-through with the end user, which I found the other guys did fantastically well, especially North Star. Creating that, demand where people are actually coming in and saying, hey, I want this tool. I don't feel like we've done that very well. I feel very good that if we can get somebody to put our product on the shelves and they've got our brand against any other brand, I like my odds. I like my odds really good. But I don't believe we're at the point where we're having enough people walking into stores saying, hey, you need to carry this brand. And that is where I think great marketing comes through.
Be careful because after this episode, you're probably going to see a 10 to 30% increase in sales. Just warning you.
I would. I hope you're right, but I'm not all that optimistic. But that's not a reflection on you necessarily.
No, marketing in. I know because I market a product in the space. So hard. I mean, and maybe I just say that, maybe I'm just, but marketing in the drywall space is very challenging for everybody. I don't think there's, people are trying different things constantly.
It is, and it's been a struggle. And one of the biggest flaws I've seen in my strategy is I never anticipated the level of turnover that I was going to see in this industry, where I could get maybe, like in the old days when I first started doing this, a lot of the drywall yards I would call on, they would sometimes have a guy who was a retired drywaller working the sales on the counter.
Okay.
And this is a guy who might have actually run the tools. And so, he might be loyal to a competitive brand, or he might be open-minded and give me a shot, but he knew the tools. And we could talk about what he liked about another brand versus what he liked about ours, or what he liked about ours versus another brand. And, it was an easier sell to some degree because they could talk to the customers if they did like our brand and sell us over what they had on their shelves already, or what they didn't have on their shelves. For me, even when I was getting turned down by guys like that, I liked dealing with people like that, right? And 20 years later, there aren't as many of those guys working the counters. 20 years later, I would say that the end user demand for automatic taping tools has exponentially grown. And at the same time, the people selling them are not as motivated. And, nowadays when I cold call or try to get in with a yard, I'm sorry?
Just maybe a good suggestion to yards or out there if you're listening, if you happen to be listening, would be to seek out or find, because it seems like there's a lot of drywallers. There's a lot of drywallers that would probably love to go and have a decent paying job, being knowledgeable about the tools at a shop. Like, it'd be smart to have at least one
close to retirement. Yeah,
have one of those dinosaurs like in the back, like answering questions about the damn tools, or able to fix the tools, or whatever.
I would love to see that. I would love to see more of that. And I don't, unfortunately. And, there was a time where I would call a yard and they'd say, hey, we're Tape Tech guys, we're Columbia guys, we're North Star guys. And it was my job to talk them into being the Drywall Master guy. And, whether I succeeded or failed, it was okay. But now I feel like I'm selling against a little bit of apathy in that, you're getting somebody that doesn't really know the difference between a corner finisher, a corner roller, and a corner applicator, and they don't care. And I find a lot of yards don't even, it's not that they don't want to carry my brand. A lot of them don't want to carry any brand of automatic taping tools, even though, in my opinion, I think the end user demand is there. And again, there's certain yards that just don't get the walk-in traffic to even justify carrying them. But there's plenty, and I mean plenty, that do, and then just don't want to put the stuff on their shelves. And they're completely overwhelmed when they do. I mean, I can't tell you how many times we used to sell.
It's the same L&W here. They don't want to carry like the extra SKUs. They got level 5 and like that's it. It's like, you guys just carry one brand of tool, and it's a beautiful shop. Always people in there. They would sell the shit out of tools, man.
They probably would, but they're not the only ones. I see that all over the country. And at least they decided to bring in a brand of taping tools. I mean, I think a lot of these guys, even if they didn't bring in mine, would be shocked at how many automatic taping tools they could sell if they just put them on their shelves. Now, naturally, I think the only one they should bring in is mine. But at the end of the day, they're not bringing in anything. And also, there's a parts component to it, right? My parts are highly interchangeable with Tape Tech, right? And just by putting parts kits on their shelves, so many yards that I've talked to are just shocked by how many kits that they move just because these guys need them and they don't even know that they need them. And I'm always getting excuses about, hey, we're not getting a call for it. I'm like, well, maybe it's because it's not on your shelf. I mean, I'll give you an example. A couple of years ago, there was a yard in Austin, Texas that I'd been working on trying to get into for a while, and they finally decided to give me a shot. And I just said, hey, why don't you just take in a box set, a 10-inch, a 12-inch, a box handle, a pump, and an adapter. That's it. And let me just send that to you. And if they don't move, I'll send you a shipping label. You send it right back. And he's like, okay, I'll take that gamble. He sold it literally while he was taking out a box. And you know what? And again, I don't want to be like, it was Drywall Master. I believe if he had brought in a tape tech, if he had brought in another brand, there's a good chance he might have still been done the
same thing. Yeah, that's good. That's a good sales tactic. Give yourself a pat on the back though, because you're sort of tenacious in the sales category. That's you, man.
Yeah, I mean, I did push it and I got him in there. But here's the thing: after that, he started bringing in a lot of tools, and I would say for about 9 months, he was becoming a really big hitter for me, and he was moving a lot of tools. At some point, I think he had some issues with some managers, and they pushed him out of there. All of a sudden, I saw my sales come to a complete halt. And then I even got a call like 4 or 5 months later from a customer saying that he was in there trying to get some taping tools. And all they had was, like a 7-inch box. And he needed other stuff, and they told him that they weren't going to be bringing it in. So I called him. I'm like, hey, I can help you sell this guy. And we can close this deal. And they're like, we've had a lot of slow-moving inventory for a while. And I'm thinking, you have a 7-inch flat box. Nobody sells a 7-inch flat box that often.
It goes back to the inexperience, to use your word, of the people selling. But the manager that doesn't want to handle extra SKUs, it's like, you're a store. Sell the damn products. I mean, that's the end of that. That's the beginning and the end. Is like, you're a specialty drywall. The only thing you should have in your store is drywall stuff.
But the thing is, I mean, that's not what they're primarily in business for, right? They're selling board, they're selling mud, they're selling steel, and they're stocking jobs. And that's what they're trained to do, and they do that very well. And tools are the gravy, but it's a really good gravy. And some of them appreciate where that gravy is. The point that I try to make to a lot of drywall yards is the reason why this is so important is that, contractors tend to be very loyal to the yard that they work with because they've got a really good relationship and a great rapport with the individuals there because, these people aren't just selling them material. They're helping them to stock their jobs. And often, though, if you have one yard in town that you're working with that's selling you all of your materials and helping you to stock your job, but they don't have the parts and materials for the tools you need. And then there's another yard in town that does. Now you're splitting your business basically. And you've made peace with the fact that you got to split your business. But just the nature of this industry is sometimes there tends to be contentious issues that happen with your existing suppliers. Now, if you're buying your parts and components, like let's just say you need cable blades, nose clips, whatever, for your taping tools, and you're buying it from the supplier that's not selling you your core goods, you're developing a rapport with that guy at the counter. And that guy slowly is getting to know you. And he's saying, hey, why don't you let us stock your jobs as well? And you're saying, well, no, I'm dealing with supplier A because that's the guy that I've got the relationship with. That's the person that I've been working with for a really long time. If supplier A has any turnover, they lose that guy that you're dealing with, or if they just do something that annoys you, that guy that's been selling you those cables, blades, whatever, that maybe the board yard's not making a ton of money on, what do you think is the first phone call you're going to get? Because you want to buy from somebody you know. You're going to buy from somebody you like. So I think a lot of board yards can be a little short-sighted and not understanding that, the taping tools aren't going to make you the same kind of money, even though the margins are really good. It can actually help you to sell what your core goods are. And that's a really hard point to make to a young kid out of college, that like you need to be developing a level of expertise because you want it when somebody comes in and says, hey, I need a blade for my 10-inch box. If you don't have that in stock, if you don't know exactly what that is, If you don't even know how to, if you even can help them to put a cable in their bazooka, they're going to remember that.
I use that. I do use that sales strategy when I'm approaching because they don't carry any colored mud. And so I'm like, if they got to go here to L&W to get the color and then they got to go back over to Chaparral, well, then, you're still developing like a relationship with those guys. And I know the dude and I'm intimate because I have very few distributors. So I'm kind of learning. I'm learning this world, and I'm just like, blown away by kind of how weird it is. But like what you're saying is exactly right. Like, carry kits, like because like the dude that runs the automatic tools might come to your shop to get a kit, like, and then you've got mud there, right?
The parts alone for this industry, it's ridiculous. I mean, we actually are a huge part supplier, and we repair tools as well. In fact, we repair other brands. And so, I mean, we know these tools pretty well, so we know that there's a market for them, and we know, again, that the market's way bigger now than it was 20 years ago. And it's frustrating because sometimes I'll talk to somebody, and this has happened way more than once. I mean, it happens a lot, actually, when I'll call a board yard, and they'll be like, well, we've got an AMES in town that can service these guys. What else are they servicing them with, right? They're selling them all their hand tools as well, and they're doing everything except that board, mud, and steel. That's all business that you guys are losing because you're just saying, yeah, there's an AMES tool store in town when you could be, basically selling those products.
It goes all the way up, though. I mean, I see this as like an industry thing. Even there's no innovation. You were in the tech world for a little bit. There's no sexiness. There's only bottom line. Like it's a struggle to try to like keep your thumb on the pulse of something new or innovative or interesting in this space. It's getting a little bit broader. We're talking marketing now, but that just been my, like CSR does a pretty good job of like, man, they got their sexy store. They got a lot of cool tools. You walk in there, it's like, it's like the Disneyland of drywall stores, like that sort of thing. It's smart, but it also is expensive to run it that way. And it's also very innovative. Not everybody's doing it that way. But, this has been good. We didn't learn as much about Sunil, the person, although it comes through a little bit in your interview, but we did learn a ton about this industry, Tape Master, like a little bit about your philosophy, but I love, and I think our listeners really love like that history, these crossovers, the influence that AMES has had, for what it's worth, like even like, Johnny coming in, like he's pulling, like, it's like they birthed this thing. And it's like its tentacles stretch far and wide. Like if I could put a bow around this episode, like it's really cool. And like Tape Masters is doing, you're getting to, further that innovation in this space, which is really cool. And you're passionate about it. I can tell.
I never imagined myself doing this, but I really
doing
going into this industry. Yeah. I mean, I was enjoying the tech industry when I was in it, but I would have more fun doing this than I thought I would be.
Why do you think you like this so much? Is it, and it might be the same for me, but is it like the challenge?
It's been fun growing a sales network out of nothing, even though it's not as big of a sales network as I think it should be.
Sure.
It was out of nothing. And that was very enjoyable for me. But also, I mean, people make a living off these tools. And I don't want to come off corny when I say this, but
no,
it's been kind of neat knowing that we're putting a product out there that, our goal, and our marketing strategy has always been like, hey, we want to make the most durable tool out there, right? I happen to believe if you were to put any product out there on the same day, they're all going to function on the first day, on day one. And with proper maintenance, they'll all function over a 5-year period. Our goal is to make sure that those maintenance periods are less with our tools than with the other guys. And because we're also a repair center and we fix the other brands, I'm confident in saying, in fact, I'm very confident in saying that over a 5-year period, over a 10-year period, that our tools will hold up and not require the same level of maintenance and the same time and the same amount of breakdowns before maintenance is required than any other brand. Okay. And we take a lot of pride in that because, again, every time you have a tool go down and every time you got to wait for it to be fixed is a day of work that you're losing sometimes as a contractor. And so that's something that's very important to us as a company. And even when we put our tools together, and by the way, we're not perfect. We definitely do have our issues where we make mistakes. But with every one of my employees, I always try to explain to them that if they don't tighten a screw, if they don't, watch for little things that happen in quality control, you're costing a guy in the field a day's work. And sometimes that can be a really, really big deal. And I don't want to do that. And so that's something I take a lot of pride in. And then also, I'm a guy that came into this industry with very little understanding or knowledge of how these tools worked. And to be honest, like I mentioned when we first started talking, I still don't run them very well, right? But I think I've played an integral role in product development and innovation, even though I'm a guy from the outside. Our extender handle. When we came into the industry, we didn't have an extender handle. And, I always felt like of all the brands, we thought Northstar probably had the best one on the market. And so whenever I would talk to a customer, and, we have a huge network of people that we deal with who do repairs. So it's not just our own people we get feedback from. We talk to the guys that are fixing these tools on a regular basis. So we know what they like and what they don't like. And I trust what those guys have to say more than, anyone, because everyone's got an opinion, right? But if you see the same opinion from the people who do repairs across the nation, you tend to put much more weight on what those guys have to say. And I think everyone felt like Northstar, they made a really, really good handle. And they still do, by the way. But it was kind of the gauntlet was thrown down, right? And we wanted to build a better handle. And, we put a lot of time and effort into that. And part of the issue was they did have a patent on their design. So that was a limitation. But, we brought in every single brand. And we really looked at it in detail. And we talked to every single customer that we knew that did repairs on them. And also guys in the field as well. And we found out, okay, what do you like about this brand? What do you not like about it? And I'll tell you, I was extremely involved in every aspect of that. Now, what we ended up doing is we found what we felt was the best component of every single brand. And we were the last ones to come to market with a box extender handle. But when we did, I feel like even though I wasn't the guy doing the CAD drawings necessarily, I have a huge mark on that extender handle. And I give my guys credit when they do things, but I feel like that was kind of my baby to some degree. And again, I didn't do the CAD drawings. I didn't do the prints. I wasn't the guy dealing with the vendors, but I had a vision for how I wanted it to look and how I wanted it to perform and how I wanted it to be. And no disrespect to Northstar, because I still think they make a great one. But I'm going to say I think we're the king when it comes to extender handles. And, honestly, I would say that about all of our tools. But if there's one tool that I think that we get a tremendous amount of compliments on, if you were to go onto a shelf and just, okay, I'm going to try every single handle in here. And this goes especially for our carbon fiber one, the Warrior carbon fiber one.
There you go.
And again, obviously I'm giving you a little bit of a sales plug here, but but I'm also, I think, answering your question too. And that is like, what do you love about this industry? And, again, it's like when guys tell me, hey, I love that handle. It's like, you're welcome.
All right. All right. So if you're running different brand of tools, you're curious about Drywall Master, maybe pick up one of these extender handles. That might be the little nudge you need to shift.
Honestly, if they say they like another brand better than mine, that's like the one thing I would literally want to throw down and pick a fight with. I can't. I refuse to let anyone make that claim. That's how confident we are, especially our carbon fiber one.
All right.
We're not going to lose on that. But it sounds like we might be wrapping this up. Is it okay if I put a plug in for a friend of mine?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Applitech. I happen to be really good friends.
Not Applitech.
I'm very good friends with the owner. I'm very good friends with the owner of Applitech.
Okay.
Outside of the fact that he is a Packer fan, and that's been a contentious issue between us for the last 20 years.
Fair enough.
I would say we've become really good friends, and I like their CFS system. And I saw the interview you did with Mark Wilson, and just so you know, Mark and I are also very good friends, and I happen to believe
great guy.
Yeah, I think he's one of the most knowledgeable guys in this industry.
Yeah.
And I think I've mentioned to you that I've had some issues with the way AMES and Tape Tech are run over the years.
Sure.
Those issues never extended to Mark Wilson. I feel like whenever Mark's ever been on a job site or whenever he's been in a meeting and our name has ever come up, I know for a fact that he's always been incredibly complimentary, and so I want to make sure I'm always complimentary towards him. Just a class act, and more importantly, he has something I don't. He's got field experience. And believe me, I have a tremendous amount of respect for anyone that's actually gotten their hands dirty running these tools. But there was one little thing that I just agreed with him when I was listening to his podcast, and that was just when he was talking about Applitech. And that's why I kind of wanted to see if I could talk you into maybe having Dave Darnitzer on your show at some point. And maybe let him go into these tools a little bit more. Mark was talking a little bit about the Graco machine that was built for the AMES CFS system. And actually, that system can actually work with Applitech's system. And I don't know that Mark actually knew that. And again, I'd rather have Dave explain that in a little bit more detail, just because I think he can sell his product a little bit better than I can. But we do believe that there's a place for CFS in the market. We don't see it as competition for automatic taping tools. We see it as complementary. I often see that whenever somebody puts anything up about either the AMES CFS system or the Applitech system on any of the Facebook drywall groups, you'll see a bunch of comments like, that stuff sucks. I'll never use it. I'll never, have a hose.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's like somebody's going to come in.
Yeah, they're always going to be critical. I get it. But the thing is, I think a lot of the critique comes from the people that probably shouldn't be using it as well, right? If you're doing a 1,400 square foot home, setup time alone would just not justify running those tools.
His points were valid on, I asked a question, he answered it. It was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I would use it.
I disagree with one little point on it. Everything else he said was correct.
I also do a pearl of wisdom, which you may or may not know. You can bestow on anyone in the drywall industry. It doesn't matter what tools they use. What would it be? What would it be? A life lesson or something you could put on a billboard?
I would just say maybe take a little less of a tribalistic approach to the decision making you make on anything you're actually using. And again, I say that with a certain level of bias. As a company that probably has not as high of a market share in the industry as they'd like. So, naturally I want people to give me a chance, but I would say that against not just me, but any brand. Obviously you're trying to grow your company as well, Nick. And I have a feeling that people in our industry tend to be, like I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, creatures of habit. And often, it's like, hey, this is my brand. It's kind of like with cars. Like I'm a Ford guy, I'm a Chevy guy. And I feel like that approach, you kind of forces you to miss out on things as well. You may, if you give somebody another chance, that might just reinforce the fact that you are a Ford guy or a Chevy guy or a Toyota guy or whatever. But
good point.
I think you owe it to yourself to give people or give other vendors or give other products an opportunity from time to time. And that goes for your product as well with Fresco Harmony. I think all you really want is a shot for people to try your products. And my guess is sometimes it's just the fact that they're tied to the way they do things in the past. and they're tied maybe to a certain vendor.
I mean,
But
it's so far outside of
yeah,
the box that it's like, I think that's the biggest challenge, but you're
yeah,
definitely right. Tribalistic approach, that's sort of the nature. It's almost like you said something at the beginning of the episode. It's almost human nature. Like we get into these like structures. These structures are hard to get out of. I find drywall is very, and it's not just the people in the field, it's the people at the retail counter. It's the people that work at the top of USG. It's like always the bottom line, always the bottom line, and it's not. Whereas I always use tech as a comparison. It's like, well, people will dump millions of dollars into an app that doesn't even work. Whereas
yeah.
drywall, not so much. Not so, that innovation it's starved for innovation almost.
Well, what I often see is the way the tribal approach often works is like, look, if somebody says, I'm always asking people the same question: how do we compare against the other guys? And if they tell me, hey, I'm using a tape tech, I'm like, okay, well, what do you think? How does our tool compare? How do you like
Hmm.
it? In comparison to tape tech. The same goes with Columbia and other brands.
Yeah.
And if they tell me, sometimes I'll run into somebody and they'll be like, I'm a tape tech guy. I love tape tech. And I'm like, okay, well, what is it that you like about tape tech that's better? It's like, well, I just like it better. And I'm trying to get them to understand. I'm like, look, I'm not trying to sell you to just say my stuff is better. I genuinely want to know what you like about that other brand, because if I hear it enough times from you and other people, I've got the engineers, I've got the vendors. We can replicate it, but we need to understand it, and we need to understand your approach. And if all you're telling me is that it's just better, then it tells me that you're taking maybe more of a tribalistic approach to this, and
Okay.
it's the brand that you like as opposed to a feature or a component. I'm a big Android guy, right? I'm not that big into iOS,
Hmm.
but it's not necessarily because I think iOS is crap. I think it's a
Hmm.
really good operating system. It just,
Yeah.
for what I use Android for, it suits my needs.
Yeah.
But if somebody from Apple was to call me, I'd probably go into detail about why it suits my needs. I wouldn't just be like, well, I like Android. And
Hmm.
because that guy from Apple probably just wants an honest answer, because he's going to
Yeah.
want to know, hey, can we tweak our products to meet your needs as well? And it's very frustrating when people take it, because it's almost like, if they do have an answer for me, why would they want to keep it secret? Like, why wouldn't they want me to know? Because now it forces me to do what they might want me to do with my product. But now maybe me and Tape Tech are competing more aggressively, and it forces both of us to come out with better innovation that they benefit from in the long run. But if you keep something a secret, if you take that tribal approach, like, well, I only want Tape Tech to win this war, I only want Columbia to win this war, I only want Drywall Master to win this war, in the end, you lose, because you do want each of us to know what we do well and what we don't do well, so we compete with each other to make better products, and that benefits the market.
That's a good answer. Sunil D'Souza. It's D'Souza.
D'Souza,
D'Souza.
D'Souza.
I had it as just Souza without the D, but there's a D in there.
You're thinking of that composer John Philip Sousa, but I got a D right in front of it.
You got a D in front of it with a comma. Thank you so much. I know you're a busy man. This has been great. I really appreciate your time. I just want you to know that.
Of course.
I think you have fantastic presence. I'm also very appreciative that you
Well,
decided
it
to come
sounds like you
on.
use taping tools, Nick. So maybe at some point you'll give our tools a shot too.
I only do colored mud.
Okay.
You want to talk about tribe? You want to talk about tribalistic? Like, yeah, I went the last
Hey,
time
I
I used
respect that.
tools. The last time I used tools was with Chad, and we had a great
Okay.
time. And I forgot how hard it was. And
Yeah.
2 days, man, on the box. And it was prior to that, 20 years ago, man. 20 years ago. I'll say this about the tools though. I loved running them. It was a lot of fun. It was very athletic. I loved timing myself. I loved running the automatic taper.
Hmm.
That was probably my favorite. Probably still would be. The technology has advanced so much. Um, However, there's nothing that like gets me like going in and transforming somebody's home into something gorgeous. Like that is like the cat's meow with
Yeah, I
color
totally
joint.
admire that, by the way. Yeah, I mean, that's admirable. Yeah. Are you
Yeah,
going to be in the next show, by the way, in New Orleans?
I will probably be there. I don't,
Okay.
I have to really be calculated. I don't know that the AWCI is the best fit for Fresco Harmony. I would probably do better at like the JLC show or like a build show, like a builder's show with contractors. I relate a lot to the builder, who like gets what I'm up to because we're doing you can do plaster in a whole entire house affordably and efficiently, like you know
Yeah. There's
like
a
that.
show that I think we're going to in September that's geared towards Hispanic contractors. I can get you the information on if you're interested.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be cool. And then other than that, man, it's been grassroots. I've had an enjoyable time, really challenging though. Imagine like just creating a product from nothing and trying to like it's super hard. Uh,
Yeah.
the podcast has been this interesting thing that has birthed out birthed out of my struggle to get into the market because one of the challenges I was having was like not being able to relate to the drywallers because I'm not using the tools. I'm not using the new Morph sander. I don't use trim
Mm.
techs from day to day. I have, it's a great product. So I was having that challenge of starting the conversation or getting into the conversation. And then with the podcast, it's just been like, this reinvigoration of like, well, yeah, I'm an expert in this arena. I can talk about it. But being able to talk with professionals has been fantastic. And then as I've dissected more and more of the industry, learning about like these intricate, this web of relationships that ties this industry together has been illuminating, like really cool.
Sure.
There
Yeah.
hasn't been I mean, you're a history major. There hasn't really been a history book written about the drywall industry, you know?
Not sure. I'm not sure how many people want to read it. That's I think
Well,
that's the issue we're having here.
a lot of people said that they weren't sure that there would be anybody that would listen to the Drywall podcast either.
True.
Especially my friends.
Yeah.
Like, that's a real snoozer. My girlfriend now was like, when we first met, I was like, yeah, I do a drywall, and she's a big podcast person. I was like, yeah, I do a drywall podcast. She's like, oh yeah, I'll put that on when I go to bed. And she listens to every episode. She enjoys them. Like and I got to know you now. Once you interview
Yeah.
somebody, it's like we know each other now. I see you at a show. It's like, oh, so remember? And we
Yeah.
might have something more fun to talk about. I wanted to talk about marketing a little bit more with like Orient, but it's okay. I think we fleshed that out enough. I just wanted to really emphasize,
I don't I didn't mean to take that in a completely different direction. I
nah,
so
no, it was good. Everything was good, and I just wanted you to know that I really appreciate your time having somebody like you
likewise.
in the industry. I think it's important to the listeners. People are really going to get a lot out of this one.
I hope so. Yeah, I mean, we're pretty easy to get a hold of. We're a small company, so chances are if you
Okay.
call here, you'll get me.
All right, sir. Well, you have a good rest of your
All right.
day.
You as well,
Drywall
Nick.
Master Tools. We'll talk soon.
Nick, I'm also going to try to get you in touch with my guy over at Applitech, so I'll send you an email on that.
Yes, and the show, and then send me an email, and I'll send you an email back on the Simon Sinek character.
Absolutely.
All right, sir. Have a good day.
Hey, thanks so much. You as well.
All right, bye. Huge shout out to Sunil for being with us on the Drywall Podcast today. I'm blown away by this guy and the amount of knowledge he has. Very well spoken, and I appreciate your time. Sir, if you have questions for Sunil or you want to find out more, you can reach out to me at info@frescoharmony.com. I am happy to pass along your information. Sunil is very open and willing to have a conversation with anybody. He's just that type of guy. Also, I'd like to give a huge shout out to AMES for sponsoring the Drywall Podcast in the month of August. Those guys have been super cool. I appreciate you and supporting the podcast so that all these baller drywallers can listen and enjoy stories like Sunil's. It's pretty cool. Maybe you've heard, maybe you haven't. Tape Tech has been dabbling in different trades lately, like plaster, concrete, stucco, etc. Now you can elevate your finishing game with their new line of Venetian trowels, crafted from durable stainless steel and made in Italy. These trowels are available in various sizes to meet all of your project needs. If you'd like to find out more, you can visit shopamestools.com or stop by your nearest AMES location to learn more. You guys have a lot of choices when you go to listen to something, whether you're at the job site or in your car or whatever. Today you decided to listen to the Drywall Podcast. Me and Sunil yammer on about the history of drywall and whatnot, and that's pretty cool. I hope that you guys learned something. I know that I did. Stay tuned next Friday. We have that rascal Daniel Osborne from Florida on the Drywall Podcast. He is with us for his second appearance. I think he was on all the way back in like episode number 7 or something crazy, but he will be with us. It's a great show. He's a great guy. Stay tuned. If you have any questions or concerns, you can reach out to me directly, info@frescoharmony.com. As I said before, I hope you all have an amazing weekend. And remember, keep drywalling.